What's happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Fighting Words, a postseason edition of Fighting Words, a eulogy season episode of Fighting Words. Anthony, I don't know that I'm surprised that we are doing this after the Phillies were bounced in 4 games. I guess not. I picked it. You picked it. But it's disappointing nonetheless. And, we've had a few days here to let things breathe since the end of the season. The Phillies going down on Thursday. And I don't know if I feel any better about it. I certainly, big picture, don't feel any better about it. I probably have at least arrived at a conclusion that the Dodgers were the better team, even though the Phillies had opportunities to win all 3 of the games in which they lost. So it makes it super frustrating. But there's some degree of acceptance for me here today. So I'll bring you in, and you were out there, and what did you get from being out there? What did you see after the game? What was your big takeaway from your trip?
Well, my first thing, Bob, is that I'm glad that you've reached a level of acceptance with this, because we all knew that, I was flying back on Friday and we had the weekend. It was going to be tough to figure out when we were going to do this episode. And I texted you after the game and said, hey, when do you want to record? And you said, March 1st, 2026.
Yeah.
So I could tell by in the moment you were not happy about the way things were going.
I never got as angry as I am capable of. I never really I never elevated to the degree of anger throughout this series. But Thursday night, it's just so disappointing when you get the efforts that you got from the starting pitcher, from Jesus Luzardo coming back and taking a bullpen day and pitching huge innings, and a couple other relievers getting the job done. And to lose the game the way that you did, to have it unravel on you the way that it did because of Ryan Kirkering doesn't know where to go with a baseball in a key spot, and then just piss poor, just absolutely piss poor at bats from the top of the lineup, just god awful at bats from the top of the lineup. And I guess, let's sift through it even a few days later. I don't know how much people want to, get into that exercise, but I think we got to talk about what we saw and what it means.
Yeah. So there's no question that in my mind, they lose this series because they didn't hit. The pitching was, on the whole, I thought was fantastic. When you look at the numbers, believe it or not, the Phillies out everything the Dodgers. Every statistical category, they were better than the Dodgers in offensively. And the Phillies weren't good, but that's how good the Phillies pitching was that they limited the Dodgers to very little in the 4 games. So clearly, it was the fact that the Phillies didn't hit. But I like to think, looking at it right now, Bob, I'm going to try and foretell the future. And my foretelling of the future is, when we look back at this era, we're going to look at this series and say, yeah, that one wasn't so bad. I think we're going to look back at this era, and obviously we're going to say choking to the Diamondbacks was one of the worst losses ever in the history of man. Losing to the Mets really, really sucked. That was terrible. But losing to the Dodgers, even though you lost in one of the most improbable ways ever in the final game, the way you got walked off was unfathomable. I don't think we'll ever see it again. When we look back at it, we're going to sit there and go, they lost to a really, really good team. And the other team pitched as well, if not better than the Phillies did. And there were 1 or 2 little moments in these 3 losses that swung the series.
Well, I think that when we look back on it, it's very likely that we're going to be looking back at a team. They lost to a team that I think is going to be back-to-back World Series champions. At this point, I would be stunned if the Dodgers did not win it all. And I know that the regular season record wasn't quite there. I know that they did not have the season that they expected to have. But you go back to March. The talk around the industry was that this might be the best team that we've seen in the last 30 years. Yeah. And when you look at it play out right now, do they have some holes? Yeah, they do, but they're a damn good team. And I think that they're by far the best team that was in this playoff field. I really don't think that there's a close second. When I still try to process what we watched, though, It's so frustrating because the Phillies' game plan from a pitching aspect was phenomenal in this series, and the bulk of the time and the vast majority of these pitchers, they were able to execute the game plan in a near flawless fashion. And I think that not only were they so damn good, but the thing that was really impressive about it was that they had to make pitch after pitch after pitch with absolutely no margin for error. It's not like, I mean, yes, I know in game 3 that they broke things open late, but for the most part, they had no wiggle room. Not only did they not have wiggle room in the scoreboard, but they knew coming into these games that this team probably wasn't going to hit. And so to still go out and execute to that degree, I think that there's something that's, I don't know, maybe at least a little bit admirable about that and that you can take away from it and say,
I mean, yeah, I'll give you a perfect example. So before game 4, I was talking to Scott Boras. He's at pretty much every Dodgers game, him and his entire troop of, of his agency representatives are all wearing the Boras baseball jerseys, right? Like they all got the matching shirts on. And obviously wanted to talk to him a little bit about Ranger Suarez, he's going to be a free agent at the end of the season kind of thing. And he pointed it out. And he said, not just Ranger. He's talking about like all the Phillies pitching. He's like, there's some really good players in that lineup over there who are not hitting. He's talking about Ohtani and Betts and Freeman that were not hitting the ball against Phillies pitching. And, to be able to keep them off balance as well, I think you're right. You nailed it. I think that their pitching plan coming into this series, with the lone exception maybe to sit there and say, do you go a second time to David Robertson in game 1 or for a second inning? With that lone exception, I think the pitching plan was as perfect as it could have been against the Dodgers.
Well, and I'm glad you said that, and I'm glad you pointed it out. You're like, with the lone exception. And I think that a lot of people in this moment, in light of what we found out today, that Rob Thomson will be back next season. And I think there are a lot of people that feel like this team needs some drastic changes. Obviously, they've made a decision at the higher management levels not to change the manager. And we'll talk about whether or not that's a smart move or it's deserved or not in a moment. But I do think that some of the frustration comes into it, knowing that the margin for error is razor thin, and you have to connect on almost every major decision throughout a series. And it does feel like, and I do think that I don't want to say it's fair to say, but I don't think it's factually incorrect to say that if in most of these playoff exits, there's been one decision that seemingly kills Rob every time. It's like there's always one that he wants to have back. And for me, it probably is the Robertson one. We talked after the first game about why it played out the way it did. You didn't really kill him. I said in real time I hated it, but also acknowledged that he seemed to be a guy short out there. There's a lot that goes into it. The bottom line, though, and the biggest takeaway for me is that these guys don't give the manager any margin for error. Like, they don't allow for a mistake. They require strategic perfection because of the mere fact that they don't hit in the playoffs. Like, this team does not hit in the playoffs now, dating back to Game 6 of the 2023 playoffs. I don't know what the numbers are. What are they, like 2-12 in their last 14 playoff games or something like that now? I don't know the exact count. But I just look at this and I go, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, like this lineup is supposed to have a ton of punch. And I know you look around all these other postseason games and nobody's really scoring all that much. We watched the Tigers and Mariners play for an eternity on Friday night. Nobody hit. It was very similar to that game that we watched on Thursday night between the Phillies and Dodgers. Game 1 of the ALCS, the big bad Blue Jays who beat the piss out of the Yankees pitching. They didn't really hit against the Mariners last night. What was it? 3-1 final score, low scoring game. So, yes, you can win only scoring 2-3 runs in a postseason game. It's not that everybody's just going off in the playoffs from an offensive perspective, but there's got to be more than this. Like, I acknowledge that Kevin Long has a great track record and he's obviously well thought of around the league and by players. I know they also were 8th in runs per game this year, and that really was an uptick towards the second half and into the second half, and they were directionally better. Like, I understand all of these things. But how many times in a row can you just have these bats be absolutely god-awful year after year after year and say, like, well, all right, like we're gonna allow the guy who is, from a coaching element, most responsible for that to continue to be here? I feel like it's like low-hanging fruit to be like the hitting coach. Guys got to go out and execute. But, I mean, they just look utterly clueless. And that's with the acknowledgement that the Dodgers pitching is phenomenal. Like, the Dodgers pitching is as good as it gets. They didn't have any layups in that series, with exception of Clayton Kershaw, and they smoked them. But that's what the playoffs are. Like you got to hit elite level pitching. You got to find a way.
And so my response to that, Bob, is I agree with you. Like, it's low hanging fruit to, fire the hitting coach or whatever. I think that is more, for teams that do that, I think you're looking at more of, this is not a cosmetic move to make the public happy. I look at that more as, this is a message to the players. Obviously, you can't get rid of 24 players, right, that screw up or whatever, right? It's always going to be the player's fault ultimately. But this is more of a message to them. Like, you didn't do your job, and this guy had to lose his job because of it.
Yeah.
And they're all really close to him. And so maybe that, for the guys who are going to be back next year, and let's be honest, there's a good number of guys that are going to be back next year. It's not going to be everybody, but a good number of players are going to be back. Those players who really, really like Kevin Long, assuming he gets let go, we don't know this yet, right? I mean, there's a thought that they announced, Rob is coming back, but there is no decisions have been made yet on the rest of the coaching staff. If you assume that that's a change that you make, that's a message to the players directly, that you just lost your friend, the guy you respect, the guy you like, you just lost him his job. Now, how do you feel?
Yeah.
Now will you change your routine? Now will you do what we've asked you to do? Now can you, whatever. I mean, because keep in mind, like, I'll give you an example. Trey Turner, we had this conversation. He had that, conversation with Rob at the beginning of last season. He had that story that I wrote where we talked about, they wanted him to make a change. They wanted him to, get on base more, high on base, steal bases, score 100 runs. And that's all that they wanted you to do. I checked in with him at the end of the season. Like, so we had that conversation back in May. I checked in with him at the end of the season. He had won the batting title, right? He fell 6 steals shy and 6 runs shy of reaching those, 40 steal 100 run goal, but he missed a month, right? So he would have hit those numbers easily, right? And I checked in with him, like, do you feel like this was, successful? And he said no. And he said no because he felt like he could do more. He felt like he could be more of a 25 home run hitter, which he only hit, 12 home runs or 13, whatever it was. Like, he felt like there was more that he could do, even though he was doing what they were asking him to do. But he bought into it. Not everybody there did. That's the problem. And so, like, it makes you wonder if a different voice and a different message.
Well, I'll say this for Trey. I felt the same. I felt that he could do more, and I know that he had a nice game in game 3, but the rest of the series was generally invisible. And whether or not that had anything to do with his layoff, I don't know. The thing that was different about this series, though, yes, you're right. Not everybody bought into the tweaks and the way that they wanted some of the offensive plate approaches to evolve. But the big talking point after the Mets series was, you're extending the strike zone. You're being overly aggressive. You're getting yourself out. Mets pitchers didn't even have to be competitive consistently in the strike zone to earn outs against the Phillies at the end of the 24 playoffs. This time around, I didn't see wild swings consistently outside of the zone. What was mystifying to me was the Dodgers pitchers, more often than not, were just filling up the zone, and the Phillies swing and miss in that series was astronomical. Like, the team is not good at hitting spin in general. That's been a talking point for a while now. And that's, that bared out in this series. But I mean, there were a number of times where the Dodgers' arms went right after the Phillies with fastballs in the zone, and they could not square it up.
Yeah.
Whether that be Bryce Harper, whether that be Trey Turner, whether that was Kyle Schwarber. Like, I mean, it was pretty much everyone. And again, I'm willing to acknowledge that you look at the top of the Dodgers order, it really struggled. Some of their dudes struggled too. And even some of their second tier guys, like the Pazes of the world, like, they were not good in that series. So I get it. Not all 9 guys are going to click, but I'll tell you what my one other observation from this team offensively, and I guess it's easy to say this, so I don't want to fall into the trap of taking the most obvious observation. But when I watch the Mariners and when I watch the Blue Jays and I watch the Brewers, I feel like that they are a connected unit. The lineup works in conjunction with one another. There is more of a pass the baton mentality. Like, it just feels like there is a more collective game plan from lineups in these postseasons. Whereas the Phillies, I feel like it's very individualistic. It's like very like, I'm Kyle Schwarber. I will try to hit a home run. I'm Bryce Harper. I'm going to try to have the moment. I'm Trey Turner. I'm going to try to have the moment. And I don't know if that's me taking if that's connecting the last 4 years in general and like trying to make something of what I see. But I don't feel like the Phillies have that like cohesiveness in their approach as an entire lineup. And I think that you need that when you get into these games.
Well, we've said for a while that the lineup is too one-sided, right? It's too much of the same thing. And that they had kind of pigeonholed themselves a little bit with the way that they had handed out contracts or guys playing certain positions. I mean, you got to remember when Schwarber and Castellanos were both brought in here, they were both brought in here to be like split DH left field. And they were both on the roster this year, and neither one of them played left field. I mean, I guess Schwarber played 8 games out there, but that's it, right? So like ultimately what they were originally brought in here for and what they became pigeonholed the Phillies because you couldn't go get the bats that you needed to balance the lineup a little bit more. So you had a mixture of contact, thump, good base running, et cetera, et cetera. It's a lot of the same. And so that's where it was a failure in construction, but it was also brought about by Bryce Harper's injuries, right? Yeah. I mean, that's what really brought this into the spot. So they tried to do whatever they could within the framework of what they had. Well, and it just didn't work, right? I mean, it just didn't work. And so that's where the change needs to be this offseason. You can have some of what you have, but you need some of what you don't have to make this a more balanced lineup.
And then that kind of brings us to where they're at today. And look, I don't want to get totally away from the series. Like there are a few other like quick things I would point out. Like Jesus Luzardo for all this up and down this season. What an absolute stud performance by him in October. Like,
yes,
that guy was a killer in this series. Like that made me a fan of him. Like whereas before I'm like, I acknowledge that he has like the high ceiling and I think that he can go into a game and shut down an opponent. It's one thing to say he has the stuff to shut down an opponent in October. It's another thing to watch him go out and pitch with a set of balls the way that he did, both as a starter and in relief. I mean, phenomenal. If the Phillies had anything going offensively, we would be like out of our minds about what Jesus Luzardo did last week against the Dodgers. It was fucking awesome.
Yeah, and not only that, and this is where it's frustrating because if Zach Wheeler doesn't get hurt,
I know.
Just think about what that bullpen looks like.
I know. And I think I pointed that out to you on Friday when we last talked. I said the thing that I just totally got wrong was – or I'm sorry, not Friday. When we talked, I guess it was in the middle of the week last week. Yeah. The thing that I got wrong was that Zach Wheeler's injury was so much more significant than I had given it credit for. And obviously I was never dismissing the fact that not having Zach Wheeler wouldn't be problematic. But I felt like they had the starting pitching depth to hang with anyone, including the Dodgers, and they did. The problem was that injury takes Luzardo out of the bullpen equation earlier in the series. He probably could have come in and pitched in a game one, or maybe Suarez is purely a reliever at that point and you use him multiple times. Like that injury depleted the ability to have the flexibility you needed. The Dodgers were able to do exactly what we thought the Phillies were going to do back in July, which is, wow, these starters are awesome. The bullpen stinks. You can cover it up with your surplus of starting pitching. And the Phillies weren't really able to do it. I mean, they did to a degree, like later.
Games 3 and 4, they did it as much as they could, right?
But when did they really need it? They needed it in 1 and 2, and they put themselves in a big time hole because they didn't have it. So, look, Alec Boehm, like I've been as critical of Alec Boehm as anyone. I thought that he had an okay series. Like I didn't come away from this series saying that it was Alec Boehm's fault that they lost. I would still maintain that if you're serious about winning a championship in the era of a team like the Dodgers existing, Alec Boehm can't be your cleanup hitter. Alec Boehm's hitting 7th or 8th for you. I'm in. I'm in for that. Cannot be hitting fourth. And he sure as hell can't be hitting fourth if Brandon Marsh is going to hit fifth. So, like, here's the whole, like, let's thread this needle where two things can be true. Brandon Marsh had a very good year for the Phillies. I was impressed by his ability to overcome a horrendous start. It's absolutely terrible. He was great for the final 3.5 months of the season. Valuable baseball player. Don't want him out of town. Not saying he shouldn't be a Philly. Dude cannot hit in the heart of your order. You cannot count on him to be a run producer in the middle of the order. He's not a 5-hitter. So if you're going to go Bone Marsh in the middle of your order, it's just not going to work. And I understand that Harrison Bader got hurt, and that probably had an impact on what happened. But listen to what I just said. Harrison Bader got hurt. I love Harrison Bader. He brought a ton of energy, a different type of juice to the team. He was awesome, and he was super productive too. But it's Harrison Bader. You know, Bryce Harper didn't get hurt. Harrison Bader got hurt. And that was like it just isn't enough. Like, you need more than that. You need more than that.
Yeah. I want to just hit on a couple of comments we got from some people here. First of all, Elizabeth, she says she's been checking our page every day since Thursday. Thanks for doing that. But all you have to do is click that thumbs up and ring the bell. So that time, whenever we go live, you find out. You don't have to check the page all the time, just so she knows. But here's Michael on Bohm. If Bohm had had little trade interest after 97 RBI 2024 season, will there be any interest in him going into a contract year? And if there is, can he get traded for anything of value? That's a great question. And let's dive into that one for a second, Bob, because if you go to MLB Trade Rumors, they are great at figuring out what arbitration numbers are going to be roughly. They have a really good idea, and they've pegged Alec Bohm at $10.5 million. Now, I don't think Alec Bohm's going to be non-tendered because he's not a bad player. But are you paying $10.5 million to Alec Bohm to be your everyday guy next year? Or would you like to pawn that off onto somebody else? And if you do pawn that off onto somebody else, you probably have to resign yourself to the fact that he's not worth what you thought he was worth a year ago.
I think that you have to take the lessons that you learned last offseason and apply that into the offseason and what you're looking for this time around. I mean, look, where they have got to make a decision is, like, is he a valuable baseball player? To some extent, sure. Is he worth $10.5 million? No. Is this team going to want to maximize its financial flexibility this winter? Probably. So I think it's likely that this time around he does get traded, and that you are looking at the terms of the deal going, what? Like, that's what they got for him? Like, I know he's not a perfect player, but that's it. Like, I think that that's what you're looking at. And it's kind of leads to the point that I wanted to get to next is, like, I said it after the game. I'm like, it's just not good enough. Like, blow it up. Blow it up is like an extreme way of, like, looking at it. When I said blow it up, I mean, like, you've got to do something fairly drastic. I'm not saying that you have to remove this entire core. I'm not saying, like, you should convince Turner that he should be traded. I'm not saying blow it up to that degree. But I just think we're all at the point now where we understand that you can't run this current iteration back again. You've gotten diminishing returns year after year for 4 seasons now. Everyone's a year older. You can't do it. You have to come in with a different type of lineup and a little bit of a different feel. But here's the problem. Kyle Schwarber, he's like your primary power source. What do you have, 55 home runs? I mean, like, 56 home runs. He's the power source on a team that too often this season lacked power. Like, I know that they got to, like, whatever, 6, 7 guys with double-digit home runs. Like, whoop-de-doo. Like, this team was not – you want a lineup that an opposing pitcher shows up and says, like, damn, this is going to be a long night for me. And again, it's not a bad offense, but this isn't a scary offense. This is not a scary offense. This was not a scary lineup this season. It just wasn't. So – you want to get rid of Kyle Schwarber? Okay, you could do that, but are you going to be better for it? Probably not. You want to get rid of Alec Bohm? Okay, but he's a useful hitter. Is he going to make your lineup better if you turn the page on Alec Bohm and you're not really going to get much back for him because you just want the money? It's not a slam dunk solution, right? Nick Castellanos. You want to get rid of Nick Castellanos? Yeah, I do too. I think it's time to turn the page from Nick Castellanos. I don't think he'll be back here. I would be stunned if he were back here.
I will say with 100% certainty now that we hear Rob will be back.
Yeah.
Nick will not be.
He's not going to be back. They knew he wasn't going to be back quite some time ago as well. And what's
Right.
funny about that is that Nick Castellanos is one of the few guys that was able to produce a big-time hit in key spots late in games for this team in this series. And he wasn't bad against the Mets last postseason either. But you got to move
or the Braves the year before that.
He's been a playoff performer at times for them, and he, you know, I think we all agree that he was underwhelming. And if you look at some of the advanced metrics, was one of the least productive players or valuable players in the sport this season. But you're not going to get anything of consequence back for him, and you're probably, I would imagine, going to have to swallow 8-ish to get rid of him in a deal. So, you know, you're going to probably pay 12 out of the 20 million that he's owed next year to go play for someone else. So that's not an obvious like move where you just are instantly better. And then, by the way, like JT Realmuto, like he was very good in this series, and they don't have an alternative. And so, do you want to shake that up? You want Rafael Marchand to start for you every game next year? You want to go out and sign some free agent catcher that's not the same player as JT Realmuto? I would assume that JT probably doesn't want to go out anywhere else at this point in his career. I would think. I think he's happy here. I would hope that the Phillies and JT Realmuto can meet in the middle, or maybe a little bit to the side of Realmuto's actual value, and where it's not nuts, but it's a fair deal. But like that doesn't make you any different. What do you want? You want to get different in the rotation? Okay, sub out Ranger Suarez. He's gone. They're not going to pay him. Andrew Painter comes up. Does that make you better in year one in 2026? I don't know. Zach
You're also going to need another starter too, because Wheeler's not going to be ready until
Wheeler won't be
late
on
May
time.
at the earliest, right? So
is that starter Taijuan Walker?
Well, I mean, I think so. That's a great question. Like the question with Taijuan Walker is he now worth it to keep just as a depth guy, a guy who could start for you at the beginning of the year while you don't have Wheeler, and then when Wheeler comes back, you kind of yo-yo him around like you did already this year? Or do you try and move off that contract and say somebody will pay him, you know, most of this, so we get some of that money back and then go get other guys?
If he were a free agent this winter, would someone pay him 1 year, $13 million?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's my point. Like that's what I'm saying. So like maybe you can trade him and get five. You know, all right, we'll eat 5 million of it. You pay the rest. But do you do that knowing what your rotation situation is?
Right.
I mean, that's a great question.
So do I think that the Phillies make the playoffs right now? If you said guess right now, are the Phillies a playoff team next season? I'd say yes. And
yes.
I think that they may win the division. Or if they don't win the division, I still think that they're going to win somewhere over 87 games and get themselves into the current playoff format, even with all the volatility and all the unknowns, right?
Yeah.
But
it's like picking the Phillies to make the playoffs and a number of wins that they're going to have is like getting 62 out of the 64 or 66 out of the 68 NCAA basketball teams right. Like, X amount of things that are going to happen. And then there's like those one or two variables that can change things. Like, yes, they're going to.
They will be good enough to play the 162 format at a pace that gets them in. Are they going to be good enough to compete within the playoff format once they are in? And that's going to be the question. Right. So I ask all of these different questions, and they're sort of rhetorical, but I ask all of these questions to make the point that there is no real obvious solution in shaking it up. Like, we all want something different, but it can't just be for the sake of it being different. So, like, let me now ask you, is Alec Boehm here next season?
I don't think so.
Is Nick Castellanos here next season? No. Is Kyle Schwarber here?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not as convinced about it. I'm not saying he's not, but I'm not like absolutely positive.
Well, let's put it this way. I'm saying yes because I think that is priority number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the Phillies. I think it is. They are so hell-bent on bringing him back that they will go over and above to do so. Now,
and that's scary because he stunk at the end of the year, and he stunk in the playoffs except for one night.
If Kyle Schwarber doesn't care about the dollars as much and is looking for a different opportunity to go to Chicago again or go home to Cincinnati because that's an up-and-coming team and maybe he could be the leader type there. If that's what he wants, then it doesn't matter any amount of money that the Phillies throw at him. It's not going to happen. So that's why I'm not 100% that he's coming back. I'd say I'm probably about 80% that he's coming back. Okay. I think he feels like there's unfinished business. The Phillies are desiring to bring him back. I think that the two things will ultimately come together.
Is JT Realmuto going to be back?
Yeah, but I'm not as confident on that one. I say yes, but I think that will ultimately, if Realmuto is going to have to be willing to take a shorter contract.
Yeah,
that's really. It's like I think he's going to want 4 years, and I can't see them. I can't see the Phillies giving him 4. I can see. I'd prefer 2. I'd say 2. You do, hands down. 3, you have to make me think about it.
Okay, and then Suarez is gone, right?
I'm pretty sure of that. Yes. I think that Boris is going to look for a big number for him, and he's going to highlight some really big game things out of Suarez. I mean, what he did in Game 3 alone, those 5 innings.
So all of this brings me back to where, like, if they don't bring back Schwarber, if they don't bring back Realmuto, like, then that creates money that you would have allocated elsewhere to new opportunities. But if they do come back and they want them back, like, let's work it. Like, we have to work under the presumption that they want both players back. And I think that everything that you say is what we perceive and presume to be true at this point. How do they really get better? Like, where do you see this getting better? And I want to bring up something that Ruben Amaro had said on WIP over the weekend, and you probably saw it. It was online. A lot of people reacted to it. And he said, it would not surprise me if the Phillies moved off of one of their big contracts this offseason. And, the obvious thought is that would include Castellanos' contract, but that almost feels like a given at this point. So was Ruben just kind of drumming up the social media interest, or is he alluding to something else?
I don't know what he's alluding to, because I'll tell you right now, there's no way Trey Turner or Bryce Harper go anywhere. And they're the big contracts, right? I mean, they're the big contract. They're not going to trade. They're not going to dump off the starting pitching. That's the strength. That's the strength of this.
Is that Aaron Nola? You're going to trade?
Right. I mean, especially with the uncertainty around Wheeler, you're not looking to move off of Nola's contract. So I think he's suggesting Trey Turner. If you want my honest opinion, that's what I think he's suggesting. I don't see any way that happens. I just don't. And if I'm wrong,
let me follow that up. Would you move off of that deal if you could just get hey, we paid Trey Turner $90 million over the last 3 years. We have an opportunity to just even out, exit this contract. Would you do that right now?
It depends on what you're going to do in conjunction with that, right? Would I, if I could get equal or better return in other places?
He was very good defensively. He really improved his defensive game. He was the batting champion. Like, if you're going to do this, like, I will say, because I agree with you. I think that what Ruben Amaro, and I don't know, but I think what he was alluding to was Trey Turner as well. I do not know that to be true, though. This is it. Like, if you're going to get out of this deal, this is the year to do it. Like, this will probably be this might be your last chance to do it.
Yeah. I mean, that would be the only. But I don't know I don't think it's going to happen. Like,
where does it put it better?
Let me throw it to you, Bob. Let me throw it to you. Like, what would you have to get back for Trey Turner to move that contract? And like, what is another team is going to take that deal with all that money left on the table, right, for another 8 years? Like, what are you getting back for Trey Turner? Like, that has to be part of the conversation. Yeah. And then even if the return is maybe slightly below what you would want, are you then replacing through free agency? Are you getting Kyle Tucker and Alex Bregman?
Well, right? You have to do this stuff. Like, all this stuff is tethered together because, like, by the way, if you move on and say Kyle Schwarber does want to go be a Red, or say JT Realmuto is hell-bent about getting that 4th year, and then you're exploring opportunities with Trey Turner. Well, what's the first baseman going to think about all that?
Yeah.
And I know you don't make deals to pacify the first baseman, but, like, I don't know. That doesn't seem like it would really jive well with what Bryce Harper would want.
We all know he's the assistant GM. I mean, right? I mean, that's not a big surprise.
So I think where I'm at, though, is like, okay, like there's the obvious things that they can or they may elect to do or not do, whatever. So then how do they get better? Like what are they going to do? Are they going to say like let's shop Brandon Marsh and that's going to make our team different? Are they going to
No,
what do we
I
do
do think
here?
I do think the entirety of the outfield will be different, starters wise. I think Brandon Marsh has a chance to stick as a platoon guy. So here's what I think it ultimately is. I think Justin Crawford is obviously a starter in the outfield next year. Whether it's in left or center remains to be seen. I tend to think it's going to be left field. I don't think that they feel like he's a major league center fielder defensively, but I think he's going to be a left fielder just like his dad was. And then I think Marsh kind of sticks as part of a platoon on the right side in right field with somebody else that you're going to bring in. And then they need to sign a center fielder. But I think that you're going to look at a whole new look to the outfield.
What are the chances that Harrison Bader is that guy?
Do I think that they would like to bring in Bader? I do, but I also think that Bader had such a great season and really a close to his season and made such a name for himself that I got to think that there's going to be big money out there for him. You're probably not going to spend.
Okay. Well, I mean,
for Harrison Bader.
Yeah. It just leaves a tremendous degree of uncertainty about what they're going to do. Like, I think everyone's at this point where they're knocking on the door. They're knocking on the door. How do they find a way to break it down? Well, we just went through all the player possibilities. You're bringing back your manager. We know that now. It's hard. It's hard. Like, I think what we're mostly going to get, I would love to sit here and say, like, they're obviously going to do something nuts this offseason. Like, it's just going to happen. We're going to get that alert. We're going to catch wind of something and we're going to go, wow, unbelievable. It feels like that's what has to happen. But when you pick it apart little by little, it's very hard to arrive at that. Like, like I'll go back to this, past Eagles offseason. They're light at edge rusher, really light now. And you're like, well, they could get nuts. Like, even though they went through all this cost-cutting stuff after the Super Bowl, you're like, they could go get Trey Hendrickson. He's unhappy in Cincinnati. They're in a contract stalemate. Why don't they go out and get him? And, like, you didn't think they would do it, but, like, it was possible that they could do it.
Yeah.
The Phillies, I'm like, what's the name? Who's the guy? Kyle Tucker? Do we know for sure Kyle Tucker is going to make this team – is going to give this team a better chance to win a World Series? I don't know that to be true.
Right.
Where the hell was he in that series? I don't like.
Yeah. They flirted with Cody Bellinger in the past. Does Cody Bellinger interest you as a center fielder?
You send Bryce. There's no chance Bryce Harper goes back to right field.
Well, let's put it this way. I won't say there's no chance. I think the Phillies, from an organizational perspective, don't want to put him back in the outfield. I think Bryce is willing to go back to the outfield. So, I know what you're thinking. Pete Alonso, right?
Yeah, it's not
first baseman.
It's not nuts. That could be.
But that's what. Yeah, I mean, it'd be fun. It'd certainly be fun, right? I think that they would prefer the path of least resistance, which is keep Harper at first base.
I just wonder, what does that look like if you go like Turner, Schwarber, Alonso, Harper, like.
Yeah,
that's a little scarier, talking about a lineup being scary. Like that would be different, but I don't think that's the solution. I also have like things with Pete Alonso where I'm just like, I don't know that I could do that, but he would change the field. I think that's the frustration. You go, okay, well, they didn't get it done and the owner wants to win and he's going to spend. And I believe all that to be true. But even a handful of days after the season ended, I have not arrived yet at a place where I'm like, well, they're going to do what needs to be done to give themselves a better chance next year. I just don't know what that is yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, by the way, Ryan Barnhart says, shout out to all the masochists here who have been waiting for Bob to put us down like the psychos we are. Thought you'd get a kick out of that. And then there's this one.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I regret not doing this on Friday, the day after. I know like a lot of people like to listen to me go crazy and they kind of like find it therapeutic, but You were in LA, and I turned 40 yesterday.
Happy birthday, my friend.
So I was gone for the weekend, and one thing I'll tell you is that the amount of beers I had this weekend was appropriate for what I watched on Thursday between the Eagles and Phillies.
There you go. Yeah, and by the way, flying back on Friday, our flight was delayed multiple hours.
Cherry on top. A little cherry on top for you.
And this one, we haven't talked about this like really in depth yet.
Yeah.
So Yolanda points out, oh my God, Dopey's coming back. Obviously, she's referring to the manager, Rob Thomson, which is the report that comes out today from New York Post, and then confirmed by several of the beat writers that Rob Thomson will be back to manage the Phillies in 2026. We mentioned it off the top. Is this the right move in your mind, Bob?
We've talked a lot about Rob on this show. I was very critical of him last season. I did wonder if sometimes his stoic nature and even keel nature had a negative impact on that 24 team. I think that they did get complacent. I thought he did a decent job this year. I've made the case already. I did not think that was necessarily a great team. We talked about all the issues it had. They needed a lot of platoons to navigate day in, day out matchups. They had key injuries. They dealt with a great deal of adversity en route to 96 wins. And I don't think that was necessarily a 96-win team. I didn't think it was an 84-win team, but I didn't think it was a 96-win team either. So I give them credit for where they landed and how they arrived where they did going into October. But, I mean, look, the end result every year has been worse. They have not performed in key situations. I don't think that's all his fault. If you can't make wholesale changes across your roster because of financial restrictions or, just the way the contracts are structured, and you want to do something different, that is the easiest thing to do. I do not think it would have been a great injustice if Rob Thomson lost his job after that series. But who's your guy then? Who's the voice? Who's the guy that's going to come in and stay true to your organization's philosophies and its scouting process and its analytics processes, and who is going to deliver it in a different way and package it in a different way that gets more out of that team? Was there a manager out there this year that would have gotten 99 wins and a championship run out of this roster? And maybe that person exists, but just because you move off of Tony Dungy and go get John Gruden and it results in a championship, it doesn't always work that way. So you have to really take stock of the way your players feel, the way that you as a front office evaluate that manager and the job that he did on a day-to-day basis. And then you have to make that decision. I would not have shed a tear had they removed him. But to sit here and say well, Rob Thompson's coming back, so never mind about 26, I'm out, I think that's silly too.
Yeah, here's how I look at it. And I think you eloquently expressed it there. And I think it was everything that you said was fair. And the way I looked at it was pretty simple, Bob. If the Phillies were not going to make changes to the roster, many changes, if they were going to continue to do what they've been doing and make changes along the margins and not, to the core of this team and really kind of give it a facelift, then I would have said Rob should not be back, because you cannot run it back for a fifth straight year with the same group. I know Trey Turner was added 23. That was a big change from 22, but otherwise it's been the same group since 22. But if you've made the decision internally that we're going to make some changes with this roster and it's going to look a lot different next year, yeah, there's going to be some guys the same, but there's going to be a lot of different than what we've had in the past, then I think Rob deserves just another year to manage this team, because he does represent the culture that the organization wants. He does keep them being a championship contender year after year, right? And yes, there are times when there are good managers who aren't great managers who can get you so far but can't get you over the hump. And maybe Rob is ultimately that, just a good manager, not a great manager. But when you are in kind of a season of I don't want to call it a retool, but kind of a transitional season like you're going into here, doing both, changing the lineup and the manager, to me is a recipe for disaster because it could go wildly wrong in so many different ways. You want as much continuity as possible. So I'd say if you're going to make the changes in the roster, then keeping Rob is fine. Now, if we're having this conversation March 1st, 2026, like you've predicted, we're going to have a show that day. And this roster is basically the same with very few cosmetic changes, and Rob's still the manager, then I will sit there on March 1st, 2026 and say, Phillies did something wrong here.
Yeah.
Phillies did something wrong here.
And that's the thing. You go back to last season and it's, well, obviously they're going to need to get a right-handed bat for the outfield. They need to get the right fit. And they didn't do that. We assumed that they would do that. We assumed certain things about their offseason last year. And instead they went out and they traded for a very good starting pitcher. And that's where they made themselves stronger and it helped them win games in the regular season. But ultimately they were a bat short. And ultimately, they did not replace Estevez and Hoffman adequately in that bullpen. Like they were short. You go back to our shows, don't do this to yourself, but if you go back and listen to the shows in February, March, when we first start talking about this team, we're like, this bullpen stinks. And that was like, I don't know that we said it that bluntly, but we're like, aren't they like two arms short out there? And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. There are certain assumptions, and I almost give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm not giving them the benefit of the doubt this winter. I cannot sit here in good faith and tell you as a listener, look, I know you're really disappointed about what happened against the Dodgers, but the Phillies really want to win a World Series, and they're going to do everything that they need to do this offseason so that on paper, going in next March, you're going to feel like they're in a better place than they were when the season ended a year ago. I don't know that that's true. I think they'd like it to be true, but they have a lot of work to do, and it's going to require some creative solutions. It's not just going to be like, well, the shiniest object in the aisle, let me go grab it and put it in the shopping cart and leave. It's not going to be that simple this time. It's not going to be like, let's go sign Trey Turner. It's going to require some balls. It's going to require some creativity. They might have to gamble a little bit. They might have to sign a couple players that you're like, I guess. It's not going to be obvious.
One thing that tying back to the way that the series against the Dodgers ended and a question that a lot of people have asked me on my Twitter feed, which blew up because it was my video that everybody got to see, over 2 million views of the Ryan Kerkering interview after the game in LA. Can he come back and pitch for this team next year after what happened? Or is it a situation where it's like, this is Mitch Williams 93 all over again? He can pitch in the league again, just can't pitch here.
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted immediately after the game, I'm not sure that guy can throw a pitch for this team ever again. A few days later, can he? I guess. I mean, they could go to him and say, like, hey, do you want to be here still? We could do you a favor and get you out of here if you want to start new. And he could say, like, yeah, I think I'd be better off elsewhere. I think he can. I don't think so. Do I think he's going to be here? If I had to guess, I personally say no. Maybe I'm still stuck in the moment, or that's too fanish of me to kind of say that that's what I think is going to happen. But could I ever trust him again? Let's say he goes out and has a great year, because he's still young. He's still very young, and he has good stuff, and we've seen what he can be for spurts. But after the season that he had and the way that it finished, where he simply blanked in a key moment, I just don't know that I could ever trust him again. If I were Rob Thomson, I don't know that I could ever trust him again in that type of spot. And so for that reason, I would look to try to move off of him. I'm not just going to give him away, though. I mean, the guy's got some value. I know people probably don't feel that way, but he does. So you tell me, I mean, control, upside, if he ever puts it together, it's there. So you can't just move off of that because you feel sorry for the guy. You still have to make a move that you better get something back for him if you're going to do that.
Yeah, I wonder, and maybe this is just me being the old guy now. I wonder if today's generation of fan is more willing to forgive than maybe the generation of fan was 30 years ago when something like this would happen, and it'd be like,
Yeah.
get the hell out. You know what I'm saying? Like I want, even as toxic as social media is, and people killed him freaking killed him in the moment on social media. Once that video came out, all of a sudden I started to see a shift in the responses. And now a lot of that was from outside of Philadelphia, because again, everybody picked up the video. Like I said, over 2 million people watched it. So I have a feeling that a lot of that was from people that were not necessarily Phillies fans, who felt bad for him and were rooting for him, right?
Yeah.
I still think that there's a chance that he could survive it here.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Right.
I think that's totally fair what you said. And I do think it's a little bit of a, I don't want to use the word softer, but like maybe a little bit more of a forgiving environment than it was back in the day. I will let you know that I'm getting some looks through the office window here. I got to get this done. So
it's time. It's time to wrap. Well, I got to leave myself. I got to go down to home opener for the Flyers.
Very exciting.
Tonight. So I'll do one last thing, and it is kind of Phillies related. Has other teams involved as well. But Mark Feinsand wrote a story automatically saying that the Phillies were one of 4 teams who have already kind of expressed interest in Munetaka Murakami, Japanese star player, mostly a third baseman, but can also play first base, can also DH. What are your thoughts? Do you go this route, Bob? Do you go, if you're going to replace something on your roster, whether it be an Alec Boehm, whether it be Kyle Schwarber, whether it's moving Harper back to the outfield and making this guy a first baseman, whatever the case might be, if you're going to make a significant change to your core group, are you doing it with a guy who's never played in the majors before?
Well, that would be creative. I say you got to do something that takes a little bit of, a little courage, a little bit of resourcefulness, not the obvious thing. This would be it. Now, the thing is, you've been interested in these players for years now, and credit to the Phillies. They're actually making themselves like a viable, if maybe they're just there to drive up the price at this point for some of these players, some of these agents, but they're at least in the conversation. And I think that the thought is around the sport that they are becoming more of a viable suitor for these players. So I like that they're swimming in these waters. I like that they're exploring these avenues. Can I sit here with a straight face and tell you, like, yeah, I love it? Like, I've never seen the guy play, but do I like the idea of it? I do.
Yeah. It's interesting because, well, first of all, the one thing I want to point out, a lot of swing and miss. Guy does hit 30 homers a year, but a lot of swing and miss. There's a lot of strikeouts there. But Nikon Sports, which is a Japanese media outlet, reported that the Yankees, Mets, Phillies, and Mariners, not the Dodgers, interestingly enough, but the Yankees, Mets, Phillies, and Mariners would be the 4 teams that would be at the top of the list to potentially bring in Munetaka Murakami.
Let's go. Let's do it. All right. Well, you enjoy the Flyers tonight.
Yeah, I will. Hey, thanks to everyone for tuning in. Just so you guys know, we do have end of season press conference Thursday with Dave Dombrowski and Rob Thomson. Now that we know he's going to be back next year, they will speak Thursday afternoon. So Bob and I will probably do another one after that, and then we'll play it by ear in the off season as things progress. I expect to be going down to the winter meetings this year in Florida in December. So we'll probably have a report from down there as well. So we're certainly not going to be doing it twice a week going forward, but we'll probably try and do another one this week, and then we'll try to stick on to it, maybe a weekly or every other week kind of schedule until spring training starts. As you guys know, we're always a little bit all over the place with that. But thanks for tuning in to this episode of Fighting Words. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, wherever you get your podcast. Best place right here on YouTube. And that's for you, Elizabeth, so you know, and everyone like you. You click the thumbs up, ring the bell. As soon as Bob and I go live, you get an alert on your device. You know we're talking Phillies baseball, and you don't have to miss a show. For those of you in the podcast feed, it's www.youtube.com/@FightingWords. For Bob Wankel, I'm Anthony Sanfilippo saying thanks for tuning in, and we will see you later this week.